chances are you've heard this track. Or this one. Or maybe this one. Well, the through line all these artists share is that at some point or another, they released music on LTJ Bukem's legendary label, Good Looking Records, the heart of intelligent drum and bass. Born in 1967, Danny Williamson knew from an early age that he wanted to pursue music. Despite playing in a jazz fusion group, he was quickly swept away by the vibrant London club scene that broke out in the late 80s.
I'm like, hold on a minute, there's 10,000 people there, a system bigger and fatter than I've ever seen in my whole life. People mixing up this, what's this music they're mixing up with, like acid, house, electronic music I've never even heard before in my life. I'm like, that's it. This is what I've got to be into, do you know what I mean?
Out of all these different subgenres, his favorite was breakbeat hardcore. It's characterized by its fast pace, and who would have guessed, breakbeats, chopped and manipulated drums from 60s and 70s funk records. He would mix beats at his house morning till night, eventually gaining the confidence to put himself up on stage. He took the name LTJ Bukem. His first single would release in 1990, a tight and well-written but slightly uninspired hardcore track named Logical Progression. It got his name out, but he really disliked the track, partly due to how his label went about releasing it. In order to keep full artistic freedom, he quit and started Good Looking Records.
Something which is essential for all record labels. You have to be able to express yourself and make the music you feel you want to make, and have a label there supporting you.
Freed from his creative constraints, Bukem combined his love for the melodic, soulful fusion tunes of his childhood, a new wave of atmospheric, spacey sounds being played at the clubs, and the aforementioned breakbeats to create the first track on Good Looking in 1991, the legendary Demons theme. This song took the incredibly rough and sharp-edged sound of early hardcore and flipped it on its head, with soaring synth lines, lush pads, and samples of a bird sanctuary. The ambient, spacey sound was a huge departure from the reggae-influenced mainstream, but Bukem knew that.
Certain people will be like into it, and certain people won't. It's a personal thing.
This record single-handedly sparked a revolution in a small group of forward-thinking listeners, and instantly gave him cult status in the scene. With a legendary release already under their belt, Good Looking began growing, and growing fast.
Hi, this is Lonnie Liston Smith, and when I'm in London, I listen to The Cosmic Show with LTJ Bukem on KISS.
His incredible releases were few and far between, but that was because Bukem was essentially out creating the entire subculture of intelligent drum and bass. He spun on some of the most legendary pirate radio stations, started an influential residency at the Mars bar named Speed, and built up a stacked roster at Good Looking. By the mid-90s, they were home to artists like Intense, Taylor, Artemis, and Pesce, truly some of the best the genre had to offer. The only problem? They weren't paying their taxes. In the flurry of tours, new signees, and releases, Bukem had forgotten about their basic finances, and GLR now had a hefty fee to pay in an incredibly short period of time. To help with this, he brought on manager Tony Fordham, who recommended that they release more consumer-friendly music. Bukem fully understood that intelligent drum and bass wasn't the most mainstream form of electronic music, and in order to make some quick cash, started looking for a different subgenre they could expand to while still keeping their signature style. In the mid-90s, categories like garage and techno were much more prevalent, but they didn't really fit the Good Looking sound. Bukem found his match in trip-hop and down-tempo, two genres that applied the same jazzy, spacey feel to hip-hop instead of drum and bass. Soon, Good Looking debuted the Earth CDs, which took the most ambient, relaxing cuts of drum and bass from the Good Looking catalog and combined them with more standard down-tempo, all themed around relaxation and meditation out in nature. Die-hard fans were angry about the perceived watering down of their sound, but this move to the mainstream single-handedly brought the label back from the edge of bankruptcy. Just before Earth, Bukem would release the first installment in his Logical Progression Mix series, which focused on curating the classic good-looking club experience, which meant that those angry people couldn't really complain. This album ended up being a surprise commercial hit too, and with these incredibly popular releases, GLR was catapulted into worldwide success. A huge international tour named Progression Sessions, a feature documentary, and even an official watch collab with Citizen all cropped up in the mid-late 90s. Perhaps the biggest change was their division into multiple sub-labels. 720, headed by Blame, was home to the most cutting-edge sci-fi drum and bass. Cookin', led by Bukem, held the most outright jazzy tracks on the label. And Ascending Grooves, led by PhD, catered to the classic good-looking sound. Bukem wasn't done though. He had a lot more planned. In 2000, he finally released his first studio album, Journey Inwards. It's an amazing record and really showcased how Good Looking had expanded their musical taste. With the newfound cash they had from their massive popularity, one thing they were able to experiment with was integrating analog instruments into the tracks. On some tours, Intense brought along a whole jazz band, and on Journey Inwards specifically, Bukem hired studio musicians to make his samples, giving the whole album an incredibly warm, home-cooked feel. Unfortunately, Journey Inwards was one of the final releases before things started to go south at the label. A long-standing but private feud with best friend and top artist Blaine boiled over in 2001, and a lot of Good Looking's best joined him when he broke away and took 720 independent. Alongside the loss of talent, the slower, more contemplative nature of the Good Looking catalog was starting to fall out of the limelight in the British music scene, replaced with more hardcore club tracks. Still, Bukem's keen eye for new talent supported the label for a little while longer. Highlights include Human Elements, the killer DJ-MC duo of Makoto and Deism that was a little more on track with the times. Deism's MCing was especially cool because she combined her amazing singing voice with more traditional MC duties, interacting with the music in a truly unique way. Even with these attempts to stay relevant though, Good Looking was falling out of fashion, with the biggest critique being that their core artists stayed incredibly static in a genre that was reinventing itself yearly. By the mid-2000s, Bukem was still out touring, but GLR was a shell of its former self. In 2009, the label stopped releasing tracks. There was a short revival attempt in 2013, but by the beginning of 2014, they stopped again. While never officially dead, this is where Good Looking's been for the past decade. Still, there's some hope left. With the recent resurgence of popularity that intelligent drum and bass has received, Bukem and his label mates have found an entirely new set of ears listening to their music. Bukem is currently on a full tour of North America, and many of his friends have re-released their high-profile tracks, keeping the Good Looking flame burning for just a little while longer.
This music has a life, and that life's long, which is why we're here talking about it today.
Danny makes fucking music that is fucking cool, and it touches you here, and it touches you here too.
We have a mainstream of shitty, simplified, fucked up, mangled sounds that come at you like a piece of shit out of a garbage bin. Yes, you have what Bukem is playing, which is clean, fresh, intelligent, thought out breaks, melodies, bass lines and pad patterns. I'm sorry, but we are the underground, untouchable,
Good Looking,
forever.
Good Looking record.